This is HB Vibes, your home for shocking and emotional war stories. Hit like, smash that subscribe, and let's dive into the drama. When two so-called war cops showed up at a black homeowner's door, they thought intimidation would be easy. But what they didn't know was that behind that door stood someone they never expected, a Navy SEAL, ready to protect his father and expose the truth. What happened next turned the whole neighborhood upside down. Mr. Daniels had always loved his home. It wasn't the biggest house on the block, nor the most modern, but it was his sanctuary. The front yard was neatly kept, the roses along the porch always blooming in season, and the small American flag swayed gently from its post near the walkway. For him, this house wasn't just a place to live, it was proof of years of sacrifice, hard work, and pride. That evening, as the sun dipped behind the rows of houses in the neighborhood, Mr. Daniels sat in his recliner with a book in hand. A soft jazz record hummed in the background, filling the air with a calm rhythm. He was just turning a page when a loud, sharp knock broke the tranquility. "Mr. Daniels," a stern voice barked from the other side of the door. "Open up." While security, frowning, he set his book aside. At this hour, he wasn't aware of any violations, and besides, the real Wah usually sent letters, not men banging at his door like police officers. He opened the door cautiously. Two men stood there, both wearing black jackets with bold white letters stitched across the back. The first said, "Security." The second, "Wah." They looked the part, firm stances, serious expressions, but something about them felt off. "Evening, Mr. Daniels said, keeping his voice calm. "What can I do for you gentlemen?" One of them, a tall man with a sharp jawline, stepped forward. "We've had multiple complaints about your property. Noise violations, lawn not being kept up to community standards, wrong types of visitors showing up at odd hours. We're here to warn you before we issue formal penalties." Mr. Daniels raised an eyebrow. His lawn was immaculate, and he hadn't hosted anyone in weeks. "Strange," he said slowly, "because I haven't heard a word from the actual Wah about any of this." The second man crossed his arms. "We're here on their authority. And if you don't want fines, or worse, you'd better start cooperating." The words stung, not because they were true, but because they were meant to intimidate. Mr. Daniels felt a heaviness in his chest. He'd seen this kind of bullying before, but something about tonight felt different. He didn't know it yet, but help was already standing just behind him. The two men pressed harder, circling Mr. Daniels with accusations that felt rehearsed. "Neighbors say your grass is too long," one said, though the lawn outside was perfectly trimmed. "You've been letting people park in the street overnight," the other added, though Mr. Daniels didn't even own more than one car. "And we've gotten reports of suspicious activity at your address," the first man finished, his voice dropping low as if to imply something darker. Mr. Daniels' patience began to thin. "Gentlemen, if there's a real issue, I'll be glad to speak with the Wah directly. But until then, I won't be taking orders from two strangers who show up unannounced." The tall man smirked. "Careful, old man, you don't want to make this harder on yourself." For the first time, Mr. Daniels' jaw tightened. He didn't like confrontation, but he wasn't one to be bullied either. The men's eyes darted around the house, almost as if they were looking for something else, some reason to push their way inside. And that's when it happened. The front door creaked open wider from behind Mr. Daniels. A shadow fell across the porch. The two officers stiffened as they realized someone else was in the house. Marcus Daniels stepped into the doorway, his broad frame filling the entrance like a wall of steel. At 6'2", with a build that spoke of years of discipline and training, he didn't need to say a word to command attention. His presence alone shifted the balance of power instantly. He wore a simple black shirt, but the sharpness in his posture, the intensity in his eyes, it all hinted at something far greater than what these imposters could handle. He had just returned from his years of service as a Navy SEAL, coming home to surprise his father after a long deployment overseas. He hadn't even unpacked yet, but fate had already placed him at the center of a confrontation. "Everything okay out here, Dad?" Marcus asked, his deep voice steady. Mr. Daniels glanced at his son, relief washing over him. "These men claim they're with the Wah," he explained, "but they seem more interested in intimidation than conversation." The taller of the two imposters cleared his throat, trying to mask his unease. "We're here on official business. Just routine enforcement." Marcus didn't flinch. He stepped forward, his eyes locked on them. "Official business. Then I'm sure you won't mind showing us your identification, the WA authorization letter, and the name of your supervisor." The imposters exchanged nervous glances. Marcus didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. His words carried the weight of quiet authority, the kind of authority that comes from experience, not bluster. "Which committee sent you?" he asked smoothly. "What's your district officer's name? Where's the paperwork for these alleged violations?" The men fumbled. Their answers didn't line up. One said the board had sent them, while the other mentioned a complaints office. Neither could produce a single document. Marcus tilted his head slightly, studying them the way a predator studies prey. "Interesting, because the actual WA requires official notices for every complaint, and they don't send out door-to-door enforcers at night. So I'll ask again, who sent you here?" The shorter man shifted uncomfortably. "Look, we don't have to answer your questions." "Yes," Marcus cut in, his tone firm but calm, "you do." Behind him, Mr. Daniels watched in awe. He had always known his son was strong, but seeing him dismantle these bullies with nothing but composure and intelligence filled him with pride. The imposters' confidence was beginning to crumble. Marcus noticed everything: how their uniforms looked store-bought, how the lettering wasn't the same style the WA used, how their boots were scuffed like they'd been used for something else entirely. "Your story doesn't add up," Marcus said, folding his arms. "And I think you know it." The taller man swallowed hard. "Listen, we're just doing our job." "No," Marcus interrupted, "you're pretending to do a job. There's a difference." The silence on the porch grew heavy. The imposters shifted their weight, clearly wanting to retreat but unwilling to admit defeat. "Mr. Daniels finally spoke, his voice calm but laced with quiet strength. "I've lived in this neighborhood for 15 years. Never once has the WA treated me like this. If you're trying to scare me, you came to the wrong house." Marcus added, "And you picked the wrong door." The men's shoulders sagged, the cracks in their facade were now wide open. Marcus pressed once more, his words cutting sharp but steady. "Last chance. Who sent you?" The shorter man's eyes darted nervously. Finally, he exhaled, defeated. "Fine, we're not with the HOA. We were asked to come here, by someone in the neighborhood. Said you were causing trouble and needed to be scared straight." Mr. Daniels felt a pang in his chest. He had always known some neighbors disliked him, but to go this far. Marcus nodded slowly, almost as if he had expected the answer. "Thank you for your honesty. Now you're going to leave. And if you, or the person who sent you, come back again, we'll have a very different kind of conversation. One that involves the actual authorities." The men nodded quickly, their earlier bravado gone. Without another word, they turned and walked back down the driveway, their fake uniforms looking less convincing with every step. When the imposters were gone, silence settled over the porch. Mr. Daniels let out a deep breath he hadn't realized he was holding. He turned to his son, his eyes misty with pride. "Marcus, you didn't even raise your voice. You just stood there, calm as can be, and they folded." Marcus smiled faintly. "Sometimes strength isn't about yelling or fighting. It's about knowing who you are, and not letting anyone shake that." They stepped back inside, closing the door behind them. The jazz record was still playing, softly filling the room. Later, Marcus helped his father file a report with the real WA, ensuring the imposters couldn't pull the same trick again. Word spread through the neighborhood, and respect for Mr. Daniels grew, no longer seen as an easy target, but as a man who stood strong, backed by a son who had given his all for his country. That night, as father and son sat together in the living room, Mr. Daniels placed a hand on Marcus's shoulder. "I'm proud of you," he said softly. Marcus nodded, his gaze steady. "They knocked on the wrong door, Dad." And with that, the house returned to peace, stronger than before, guarded not just by walls, but by resilience, truth, and the unbreakable bond between father and son. If you felt the heartbeat of this story, give it a like, share it with someone who needs hope, and subscribe to HB Vibes, where every story carries a lesson for the soul.